This video is brought to you by Hero Within. The Hollywood Reporter just ran a story about Lucasfilm having a director for their 2022 Star Wars movie and their belief that Kathleen Kennedy's time at Lucasfilm is at an end. Whoa, this is going to be spicy. We got to get into this. It's like the news, but for nerds. Shout out to The Gas Mass. Indeed, Dathomir is the planet where the Night Sisters hail from. Make sure you stay the end of this video where we will ask another nerd card question. What's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday to you. I'm Josh. Welcome back to the channel, and whoa, do we have a spicy story for you today. I was legit not expecting something like this to happen, but the Hollywood Reporter just dropped a bombshell of an article. A lot of people are going to be talking about that. That's what we're going to do here, so I want to break into the article, talk about some of it, break it down, and then I'm going to speculate on my feelings about everything that's going on with Star Wars. Oh, and don't forget, chop that like button. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I'm going to be reading right from the article from the Hollywood Reporter. You are going to hear a lot of talk about this article. It is already making waves. Variety's responded with their own thing. A lot of people are going to be talking about this. So let me just read the first opening line, like the log line, if you will, of this article, and you will see the kind of tone it sets. It says here, the Lucasfilm chief has a director lined up for a 2022 film, even as she has yet to settle on the direction for the marquee franchise's evolving mythology or her own future. That is certainly setting a tone, and I mean, wow, let's just get into it. Now, interestingly, this article is almost like a response to the PR article that she did yesterday with Rolling Stone. I talked about this. There's a video. I talked about the ending of the Skywalker saga, all those rumors, and her article with Rolling Stone. So they're referring to some of the stuff that we talked about yesterday, but I think it's pretty fair to point out. They're kind of talking about how she's 66 and maybe reading into the silence, you know, of her not really making a lot of statements. But in her article in the Rolling Stone, she said, what happens in the future and how long and how much longer do I do this? I don't know yet. I'm looking at all of that. Now, the article then goes on to talk about this premiere they had for the first 3 episodes of The Mandalorian, and holy crap, people have seen the 3rd episode of The Mandalorian already. I am jealous beyond belief of that, but I digress. They're talking about some interesting things here that were said because they brought out the cast and crew afterwards and did sort of a Q&A sort of thing. And they bring up this very interesting thing that Werner Herzog said. And I've sort of talked about this a little bit with the new mythology that they're building, but check this out. He said here, what you are creating is an entire universe. The universe is filled with new mythology. Not very often in the cultural history have we had new mythologies, and I find it very significant. Now, the article then goes on to imply that who better to take the reins of the creative new mythology for Star Wars than Favreau himself, pointing out that he has fan loyalty. He is a Team Disney player. He did The Jungle Book, The Lion King, Iron Man 1, launching the MCU with Kevin Feige, which they do bring up how close he has a relationship with Kevin Feige. And then the article goes on to say here, so with or without Kennedy, sources say it seems likely that Favreau will have a lot to say over the future of Star Wars. These sources also say Kennedy's ideal team includes key roles for Michelle Rejwan, a producer on Episode 9 and Lucasfilm's Senior VP Live-Action Development and Production, and Dave Filoni, the veteran animator, director, and George Lucas's protege, who directed live action for the very first time with 2 episodes of The Mandalorian. Even if remaining at Lucasfilm is not in the cards for Kennedy, this plan would enable her to trumpet that she has done the job she was hired to do, completing the Skywalker saga, and she left the franchise in good hands. Now, I have a lot to say about that, and I'm going to get into speculation in a bit, but let's go on and talk about some more things that are in the article. Now, the article says here, sources say Kennedy has a film on deck for 2022, but not the one being developed by The Last Jedi filmmaker Rian Johnson. No announcement is planned until January. Kennedy's contract is up in 2021, so whether she will be on the job when the film is completed is not clear. Kennedy insists she's enjoyed running Lucasfilm, but in some ways it's hard to see how. She has had one of the hardest jobs in Hollywood, inventing stories under a white-hot spotlight and dealing in a universe where rabid fans have plenty of ideas, mostly about what they don't want. And she was picked by Lucas before he sold to Disney, not Iger. It's not hard to imagine that Iger would like to install his own choice to head this bauble that costs $4 billion and has generated some headaches since. It's also not hard to imagine that Iger has not enjoyed the negative noise around the franchise despite the nearly $5 billion in global box office from Disney's 4 installments since 2015. Now, the last thing that they say in the article, and I'm just going to paraphrase here, but they basically say that yes, Feige should be involved in some way, that their sources have said that it's just so clear that if you're Iger, you have to figure out how to involve how to involve Kevin Feige because he's just got so much goodwill. But they also point out that he's doing so much with Marvel right now with the new Phase 4, those 5 new Marvel movies that we talked about on Monday. The dude's a pretty busy guy, so maybe it's not going to fit perfectly into his schedule to do the 2022 movie. Okay, now let's get into speculation. I want to talk about this thing. This is a big freaking deal. And look, I hear you, people out there on the internet, despite you not articulating your points or opinions in the best way. I hear you when people are saying, I don't understand, Josh. $5 billion in the box office. I love the sequel trilogy. I just can't see why there's even a problem for Star Wars at all. I want to show you one simple graph that I think can really illustrate what the problem is. Okay, so check this out. This right here is a worldwide Google Trends analytics comparison for web searches for Star Wars The Last Jedi and Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker. Literally those things. And look, you can get into a lot of details in the analytics here as far as, is this a search term or is this a targeted keyword? Look, there's a lot of like weird stuff with analytics, but the point is when you look at this chart, do you see the comparison here? The blue is The Last Jedi and the red is The Rise of Skywalker. And if you see these spikes here, these spikes before this huge spike here, which of course took place in December of 2017 when The Last Jedi peaked, went up to 100 as far as search volume interest. Well, these peaks here are literally for the promotion for The Last Jedi. It has to do with how much buzz and interest was out there on the internet for The Last Jedi. Look over here with these red spikes here. And I can zoom in to show you, but they're literally coming out at about half of what The Last Jedi spikes were on the web. And if you look at the YouTube searches, it's actually even worse. But basically, what this points to is that despite The Rise of Skywalker being this huge, massive thing for Star Wars, the virtual interest all around the world is literally about half of what it was going into The Last Jedi. So when people try to tell me that like, oh, there's nothing wrong with Star Wars, guys, I just hope this chart can like explain it. I'm not trying to poo-poo on anybody's parade, but it's like facts. Facts don't lie, man. Look at what is happening. The brand is trending in a bad direction, and $5 billion is still $5 billion. I think that's great. I'm happy that they made it. But look, you can't look at this data and deny that there is an issue going on with Star Wars as a brand. So, okay, are we on the same page? Thank you. Awesome. Moving along. Okay, let's talk about Kathy stepping down in 2021. A lot of people have speculated about this, talked about this. Now, the sources that are talking to The Hollywood Reporter are echoing some very interesting things that I have heard. And if you recall, there was that lady that works for, oh man, I forget what tab, I think it was Variety, but she had the podcast, and on her podcast, she was talking about Dan and Dave, and she was talking about Kathleen Kennedy and sort of setting the future up and things like that. So this is not something that is that unimaginable to believe. Like, a lot of sources are sort of corroborating this idea that Kathy is looking to set things up and then step down in 2021. Now, here's what I think is interesting. If she can lean in to the fact that she put Favreau and Filoni together and gave us The Mandalorian, and then if those gentlemen become the arbiters of Star Wars moving forward, and she can take credit for setting them up that way and leaning into that, it is a brilliant PR move. And I'm just going to be completely real. For my part here, I've tried to be fair to Kathy. I've tried to be fair in my coverage. And if she actually leans into this and does set these two gentlemen up with Michelle Rejwan and maybe even George for the future of Star Wars, I will never forget that, and I will constantly bring it up in my coverage to be fair to her. I think it's a great move for her. I think it saves a lot of face. And look, no matter where you fall on this, because there's people that like vehemently hate this woman, like that's fine, like, you know, that's your thing. But the bottom line is she was given sort of an impossible task. Did she do the job amazingly well? That's debatable. Did she do it as best that she could? I don't think so, right? That's where I stand on it. But I think it would be really smart for the brand of Star Wars and for Kathy to lean into the fact that she's setting this thing up for the future. So I hope that's the way that goes. Now, let's talk about what this means for Star Wars if Favreau is really the guy. Because basically what they're saying without saying it in this article is that Jon Favreau is going to be the writer-director of the 2022 Star Wars movie. That's way too early to make that call. They probably can't confirm it, but they can confirm that she's got somebody, right? But what are they talking about in the article? They're clearly talking about her dream team being Favreau, Filoni, and Michelle Rejwan. Now, look, I don't know much about Michelle Rejwan, so I can't really speculate about her involvement and what it would mean for the brand. But it's pretty obvious that bringing Filoni into a higher position and elevating Favreau would just be such a smart move right now. The Mandalorian is pretty much universally loved by Star Wars fans. When you're seeing people that have classically hated on the sequel trilogy for a long, long time, literally saying that they love Baby Yoda, you know we're in a good spot. So what is going on with The Mandalorian is a beautiful thing. And again, if they lean into that and give Jon something moving forward, I think it just makes sense. It would win a lot of fans back over. A lot of fans would be willing to give that a shot. I honestly can't explain how good this would be for Star Wars, in my opinion. I think this would be freaking brilliant. And despite everything that has happened and this crazy fan war and expectations and everything that has happened, we might actually live in a universe where on the other side of this, we are actually set up for an amazing future of Star Wars. If you've been hardcore like I have, if you're one of these people that really likes Dave Filoni, you love Jon Favreau, you like what's going on with Mando, guys, we might, through the craziness of this and through these tumultuous times, we might actually arrive at a pretty good ending and a pretty good future for Star Wars. So it's amazing. And I think one of the really unspoken reasons that making Favreau in charge of that trilogy would be really smart is because of the relationship he has with Feige. Now, at this point, there's a big argument and discussion about, well, how is Feige going to be able to come over and do this? And I always fall on the side where I'm like, look, the dude he's on unlimited bandwidth. Maybe he's cloned himself already. He's the greatest producer of all time. He might be an alien from the future. You're talking about like the Elon Musk of producers. It's ridiculous. But to be fair, this putting Favreau in charge presents an interesting opportunity because Favreau and Feige worked on Iron Man 1 and set up the MCU. And Favreau has been a big friend and helper to the MCU. He's been in the Spider-Man films. He sees what Feige does when he works with other producers like Amy Pascal. And so all it would take, really, is Feige getting on a stage with Favreau talking about how he's taking lessons from Feige, those two dudes being real chummy on stage. That's literally all it's going to take. And then you like put Feige in as a consultant role or whatever. He can barely be actually involved, but the perception of it would be so positive for fans. So I love that as an opportunity because their connection is there. Like literally, Favreau, I'm telling you right now, lean in, listen to Papa Josh on this one. Next year, you're going to see a statement from Favreau. If this all goes the way I think it will go, you're going to see a statement by Favreau saying, look, I learned a lot from Kevin Feige. I'm trying to bring some of the lessons that he taught me with his incredible accomplishments in the Marvel Cinematic Universe over to what I am doing with my Star Wars trilogy. And holy crap, I'm going to get that tattooed on me because that is an amazing statement from a PR standpoint. You guys know I'm a brand guy. I'm loving everything that I am seeing right here. This is magic. Another very interesting opportunity here is bringing George back to help develop whatever happens next. I think, look, in the Rolling Stone article, they asked about George coming back. Kathy said she would love it, but she doubts George would do it. I don't know how to read that, but I will say this. George came and helped Filoni and helped Favreau out while shooting The Mandalorian. He literally said that he considers Filoni to be something like a son of his, and that's just magical. By the way, did you see how emotional Dave Filoni got when that statement was brought up by Bryce Dallas Howard? Like, that's incredible stuff. Like, Ron Howard... Just go watch that. The thing at the El Capitan where all the cast and crew are talking about Mando. If you're a Star Wars fan, check it out. It's beautiful. Dave Filoni got really emotional about that. It's super cool. Point being, George does love Star Wars. He wants Star Wars to have a good future. I think if you bring Favreau and Filoni and you have George Lucas being involved and you present it as these guys brainchilding the future of Star Wars, you're going to get a lot of people on board. It is a beautiful PR opportunity. I think that would be amazing, and I really hope that George comes back. He doesn't even have to do much. He really just has to sit there and be like, this is what Jedi Knights are like. This is what the Sith are like, blah, 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 blah. And then they take it and run with it, which is essentially what they did in Mando, right? So I just think we might be getting, on the other end of this craziness, a beautiful situation for Star Wars. I'll be completely honest with you guys. I was not planning on going to Star Wars Celebration next year because I was like, it seems like kind of a lame duck year. Nothing's coming out except Disney Plus stuff. I'll wait for the movie stuff. I think now I have to go next year because I cannot not be there when Favreau comes out, Feige comes out on stage, and they announce this big future of Star Wars that they're working on. Like, wow, my brain will literally melt. So I think we're looking forward to the announcement in January of who officially is going to be getting the movie in 2022. I'm 99% sure it's going to be Johnny Favs. And by the way, I'm doing a live stream tomorrow, Fan Chat Live with James Razile from the Rebel Scum podcast, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are going to sit down and we're going to talk about the future of Star Wars, Johnny Favreau taking over, and just all the hype and stuff that we love about that. So make sure you come back for that live stream tomorrow. And now quickly, I want to talk about the sponsor of this video, Hero Within. Guys, you've heard me talk about Hero Within before. They make amazing nerdy gear that from a distance just looks like some slick streetwear. And as you get closer, you can admire all the nerdy intricacies of the gear. It is awesome stuff. And with the holidays right around the corner, you should definitely be picking up some of this beautiful stuff for the nerds in your life. Use the code denofnerds at checkout to get a little percentage off, and it helps us here out on the channel. So, if you want to get some sweet nerdy gear and help the channel out, use the code denofnerds at checkout at Hero Within. And now let's check the nerd card before we get out of here. I want to know, what was the first movie that Jon Favreau was in as an actor, and it wasn't Swingers? It actually happened a couple years before that. Kind of mind-blowing. I'm hoping somebody knows it. But question remains, what film was the first film that Jon Favreau showed up in Hollywood? Answer that question in the comment section below. As I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.